Hey, hey, hey. Is that so, Nikki? Do you know what time it is? Tell me, do you know? Do you know what time it is? Tell me, do you know? Do you know what time it is? Tell me, do you know? You know what? I can't even remember the words to that song, but that's showing my age, telling y'all how old I am. That I even can remember to sing that song. That's an old song. But anyway, well, welcome. My name is Nichelle, the boss Smith. Nikki is what they call me. So welcome to That's So Nikki. So tonight, I want to talk to you about something that is just so dear to my heart, so passionate in my heart nowadays because we see so much of it, and that is knowing who we are, our identity. And we don't talk enough about it, whether we're talking to our sons or our daughters or our girlfriends or whoever, we're talking about. We don't talk enough about it, but it's a lot of it going on. It's a lot of people who just don't know who they are, and they're dealing with ego and low self-esteem and, just dealing with a lot. And so tonight, I want to talk about it. I say so much. I'm trying to stop y'all. Help me out. Keep praying for me. Um I am an only girl and the oldest of my siblings. And so I've always done everything either first and or by myself. And so growing up, I've never really had a problem with doing things on my own or having my own identity or having my own thought process or whatever, whatever you want to call it. And so I always knew pretty much exactly what I wanted to do early on. I wanted to be an attorney, which I thank God that my daughter is doing now. She's doing a wonderful job in getting her degrees and just going straight through school. I was lazy. When you told me I had to stay in school for 8 years, I just didn't want to do that. And so the next best thing for me was doing hair. I've always loved hair. I've always loved beauty. I've always loved makeup, anything girly, anything frilly, anything blingy. I loved it. So that was the next best thing for me to do. And that's what I done. I went to school to be a stylist. That was 30 years ago. So I've been a stylist. I'm pretty much retired now. I do a couple of clients, people who have been my clients for years, and they just couldn't find anybody that they absolutely love. And when I have time, so I'll do hair then. But I pretty much had my life mapped out in my head. And so it started off fine. Got out of school, went in the salon. Made a lot of money and was very successful with it. And I was pretty opinionated because I was me. I knew who I was. I knew who I wanted. I knew what I wanted. And I just always went after whatever it was that I wanted. Um, I was raised by two very, very strong women, my grandmother and my mom. My grandmother's husband got killed when my mom was really, really young. And then my dad went to Vietnam. Of course, he was fine when he came back, but he just had a different thought process when he came back. And so I was raised by two very strong, independent women. And so it wasn't hard for me to come along and give my thought process and tell everybody what I'm passionate about. See that? Um, and so as we move along, or as I moved along in my life, I ran into um, a time in my life where I really cared about what a certain group of people thought. And it caused me to start second guessing myself, second guessing who I was. And those people didn't necessarily, I wasn't necessarily their favorite person. I'll say it like that. They were not fans of mine, is what I'm trying to say. And I allowed those people because I wanted to be a part of that circle. And that was the first time that I ever felt like that. It was the first time that I ever felt like I wanted to be a part of a circle. And so because I wanted to be a part of that circle, I cared about what they thought. And for years, this went on for years, and eventually it started to tear down who I was authentically. I've always been a very, very outgoing person, not really fearful about doing anything. And I got to a point where I was second guessing everything about what I was doing. Even as a grown woman, when I started having my children or whatever, I would second guess things about them and my businesses, and was I good enough to do this, and was I good enough to do that, and just not paying attention to what was going on and not seeking God on certain things. I allowed people to tell me who I was. Now, fast forward to today, if you ask me about it, if I allow someone to speak in my life, which that very seldom ever happens, if I allow someone to speak in my life, you best be sure it's going to be somebody who is about something and doing something on their own. No longer will I allow someone, you see my neck, you see that? No longer will I allow someone who doesn't have the credentials to tell me who I am. And that's a lot of what's going on today. A lot of people don't understand or know who they are because they haven't taken the time to figure that out. We take time to do everything else, but we very seldom ever take the time to sit down and spend some time with ourselves and know who we are. And so that's what I want to talk about tonight. Circles are very important, very important. And it is so funny how I thought when I was younger that after you get a certain age, you pretty much know it all. I used to think 35 was old, y'all. I literally did. I mean, I'm so far past 35 now, I can't even remember 35. But anyway, but what I'm learning is, and me and my mom had this conversation the other day, you never stop learning. I've always heard it, but now I'm experiencing it. You never stop learning. You never stop reinventing yourself. As you get older, things just get different. They are different. You know, you have to change things. Oh, these earrings are so big and they getting on my nerves. But as you get older, you have to change things and move things around, and life changes, and you go through these cycles of life, and you have to maneuver. And if you don't know who you are, it's a very, very hard to maneuver. So what I had to do in my situation, because the circle that I wanted to be in really was family. And because they were always in my life and always around, my first thought was, oh, they're not going to say anything that's, to hurt me. They're not going to say anything to tear me down. And a lot of times people don't know that's exactly what they're doing. But the enemy can work through people just like God can, just like God will. And so that's what was happening in my life. And as it continued to go on and on and on for years and years and years and years, when I finally realized it, who am I? I didn't even know who I was. I had to make some changes and spend some time with myself to figure out who I was. I had to come back to myself after all of these years of doing things. I had owned salons. I own a real estate brokerage. I've done a lot of things. I'm a coach. I've done a lot of things. And after all that stuff, you would think, no, she knows who she is. She knows where she's going. That was not the case. And so it was so sad to realize that I didn't know who I was, and I had to stop and be quiet. I had to get by myself so that I can do and take some self inventory. Sorry, guys, my sinuses are acting up. And so the one thing that I came up with, I am a true believer in God. And I'm not saying that to say that I am holier than thou. And I got some issues and some things that I'm working out to this day, as we all do. But I am a true believer in his word. And the older I get, the more that word is applied. I guess when I was younger, I could describe it as maybe knowing the word, but not necessarily applying it. It didn't run congruent with my life. And now what I understand is in every situation that I'm in, I have to use scripture. There's no way that I can't, because that's how I win. My name, Nichelle, means victorious. So I can't walk this earth and lose. It won't happen. All I do is win. See how I spoke that life over myself? That's what you have to do. And you're in identity, knowing who you are, you speak that life over yourself. But anyway, that's another show. So on a serious note, in spending time with myself, one thing I heard God say is knowing who you are is believing who God is. Knowing who you are is believing who God is. We were created in God's image. God is so mindful of us. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. There are so many scriptures in the Bible that talk about how much he loves us and who we are and how he created us in his own image. And I just can't imagine not being who he created me to be in here. I can't imagine trying to be somebody else, try to walk in somebody else's footsteps, or trying to walk in what someone else thinks that I should be. It reminds me, and I know I'm probably going to get a lot of slack from this, but I just got to keep it real. That's so Nikki. It's my show. I used to cringe at church when people would say, I got a word for you. No, you don't. Because if God didn't share it with me, then he didn't share it with you before he shares it with me. When you give it to me, it should be a witness in my spirit. It shouldn't be a secret that God shared with you and then he tells you to come give it to me. I don't know. It's hard for me to get with that. But anyway, that's another show too. But what I have come to realize is, in coming back to myself is what I called it. I really had to get close with God. I mean, I really had to get by myself and figure out what thus saith the Lord for me. And that was the only way that I could come back. Now, of course, there were some things that I had to do, but at the same time, I had to hear from my creator. I had to hear from the manufacturer what I needed to do. And in doing that, I had to be quiet. And so there have been some things that have gone on in my life that now that I think about it, they had to happen in order for me to be me. And when I say things that had to happen, I'm not talking about all good things. I'm talking about some traumatic things, some hurtful things, some things that I had to forgive and some things that I had to get over. But if they had not have happened, I wouldn't be who I am. I was talking to my mom the other day, and we were talking about something, and she said, everything that you're going through is building character. I said, well, good Lord, how old do you have to be? My character is old as dirt. He's still building character, but he's still building character. And so I have to pay attention to the things of God in order for me to be who I am created to be. One of the things that I had to do is I had to sit back and I had to build an image of myself. I had to look at myself and say, hey, let me build this image of myself, spend some time in the word, and see if it lines up. Take away what needs to be taken away and add back in what needs to be added in. And I know that sounds weird. It might sound childish or whatever, but that's the process that I had to go through. A lot of times we can be in relationships, even in marriage or in friendships or work relationships. And because we respect people, we hope and pray and think that they respect us back, but that's not always the case. And people don't always mean to do it. But if they've grown up in a negative environment or whatever, hurt people hurt people. And when hurt people get a hold to you and you allow them to be in your circle and stay in your circle, you get enough of that on a daily basis, baby, guess who you gonna think you are? Somebody else. And so that's why it's so important to be careful who your circles are. The one mistake that I think that we as women make, and a lot of us are making it, is when we do connect and get married, if you haven't figured out, if you're not on the path to try to figure out who you are, I don't even know if your relationship can be authentic. I don't even know if your relationship can be real. I take that back. Somebody can love you enough to ride with you until you figure it out. I do believe that. God definitely works through people. And a lot of people will say, well, you have to be whole first before you come to this relationship or to this marriage. And I believe to a certain extent that you have to. But I believe also that you're progressing daily. And so in order to completely be whole, I don't know that anybody is completely whole when they first get married. I believe that they can become whole. And I believe that they do that because God works through people. And if you pick the right circles, if you talk to God and ask God to put the right people in your life, I believe that you can become the best that you can possibly be. Do I believe you can do that by yourself? I don't. I believe that there are some things that you can do by yourself. That's why when I hear people say, he's a self-made man. No, he's not. No, he's not. God has worked through somebody for you and for me to get to where we need to be. And so I know I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but I'm really, really passionate about it because I believe that a lot of the situations that the world is in now is because people don't know who they are and they don't take time to figure that out. They just see somebody that they might want to mimic, and that's what they do. And they deal in ego and pride on a regular basis. You know, pride comes from deep shame. Whatever your deep shame is, that's where your pride comes from. And the more shame you have, the more pride you have. And so that's something that we need to be working on a daily basis. But I do believe that a lot of the murders and killings and things like that come from people who don't know who they are. They haven't figured out why they are the way that they are. For somebody who knows who they are, I don't have to argue with you about that. I don't mind walking away. Now, do I do that on a regular basis? He's still working on me. He is. And maybe I got some work that I need to do and go back to the drawing board. And that's okay, but I know that. But for the most part, I'm not going to argue about who I am and because I'm going to do what I'm going to do. You hear me? You understand what I'm saying to you? I'm not going to do anything else. So to argue back and forth with you, it's a downhill battle because I'm going to do what I'm going to do because I know who I am. So knowing who you are is believing who God is. Believe what he says about you. And so when you know your strengths, it's hard for people to tear you down when you have the facts. You have the facts about who he created you to be. So when somebody's speaking in your life, telling you that you're not this and you're not that and you're not good enough, that's not your audience. Those are not the people who were created to be in your circle. And you don't waste time moving them out of your inner or your heart circle. Now, does that mean you let everybody go? Nope. There's a big circle all around those two circles, that heart circle and that outer circle. You move them out there. You don't have to put people down. God tells us to love, but that's all he tells us to do. He just tells us to love. We don't have to trust what they say. You trust what God says. And if what they're saying is not lining up with what God says, whose report will you believe? I know whose report that I'm going to believe, and I'm going to keep it moving. But like I said, at one time in my life, it just was not like that. And I didn't even know that those things were going on. I'm just thinking that I'm moving around and I'm doing what I need to do. And then things just didn't look the way that I had planned them to look one day. And I'm sitting thinking, how in the world did I get here? What street did I turn down to get here? When in actuality, I turned and it was a cul-de-sac, meaning it wasn't moving. There was no through traffic down that street. And I was just sitting there, just confident and, well, not confident, can't use that word, comfortable, I guess I would say, because I wanted to continue to be in that circle. I thought that circle was going to be the rest of my life. And sometimes it's just not. And we have to know that it's not. And so some of the things that I had to do was I had to sit down and I had to write things. I'm a paper person. Even though I deal with technology, we have to, because technology is the future and it's just going to get better and better as time goes on. But I'm a person, I have to write things. I have to see things. And I had to sit down and I had to say to myself, Nikki, who are you? What are your strengths? What are your characteristics? What are your morals? Do you still have the same morals? Times change, people change. You still got the same morals? And so I had to make a list. Literally, I had to write down the things that I felt like were my strengths. And then I started asking God, put the right people around me. I think I started asking that maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. Because I really wasn't comfortable with the circle that I had. I didn't feel like that I had anybody that I could call that would protect me. We all want to feel protected. And I just didn't feel like that I had that in my circle. I didn't feel like that I had someone who would go to bat for me. And so I started praying about it. And God, thank God, he put some people in my life who could speak truth in love, and then allow me to ponder over what was said and make my decision. And I pray to God that I made the right decisions. I believe I have. Things are looking up for me. But I really had to sit down and make the list of what and who that I felt like that I was. And so in making that list, after I made the list, I asked God, show me what things on this list are true. And he took me back to a book that I have had for years by Joyce Myers. It's The Confident Woman, I think is what the name of it is. Yeah, The Confident Woman. So it's an old book. I think I bought it in like 2006. And so I didn't even know why I was looking in the book or whatever. But as I looked through the book, I don't know why he just didn't have me open the Bible, but I looked through the book, and he took me to a verse in Romans 11:36. And so Romans 11:36 says, for him and through him and to him are all things. For all things originate with him and come from him. All things live through him, and all things center in and tend to consummate and to end in him. To him be the glory forever. Amen. It is so. Romans 11:36. And so that done something to me. It made me understand and realize, hey, wait a minute. The only person that I should be truly concerned with pleasing is God. And so, in knowing that the only person that I need to truly be concerned with pleasing is God, it helped me to snap out of it. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying that you don't have to please your circle. You don't have to please, you won't have any friends. You won't have anybody around you if you truly think that. But the last word, the ultimate word is his word. And so when people say things that don't line up with what God says about you, go back to his word. And even when people say things that you think to yourself, is there any truth to that? Allow God to show it to you. God, they said I'm argumentative. Show it to me, God. Show me, am I an argumentative person? He'll show it to you. I promise. He showed me a whole bunch of stuff about me that I was like, you talking to me? Me? Sweet little Nikki. That's so Nikki. He showed me a lot of things about me that I needed to change. And, at this point in my life, I have 2 children, a daughter and a son, both 2 very great kids. God helped me raise. I say that all the time, that God, I prayed and I asked God, be the other parent. Not that their father is not around. He is, and he's a good dad. But in that, I was married for a lot of years. Actually, I'm still married. We're not divorced. But in that, sometimes you can lose yourself in a relationship. And I'm not always talking about women. Men do the same thing. They lose themselves as well, because you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to figure out how to come to that happy medium and make things work. But at the same time, you have to be really, really careful about putting things before God. It will change who you are. It can change your life. And God is so jealous. He will move that stuff out of the way. And so I say that not to say, my husband and I didn't make it or whatever. No, I'm not saying I'm happy about that. But at the same time, I know that God worked through that to help me snap out of it and come back to myself, and come back to who I am. But I'm rambling right now. But I just cannot get across how important that it is that we take self-inventory on a daily, if you don't have time on a daily, at least a weekly basis, and write down the things that concern you about yourself. Be true to yourself. I hate to hear people say, that's just how I am. You don't want to change. You don't want to do different. And people don't owe it to you to go along with your bad behavior and how you act. Self-identity is a part of that. If you're taking self-inventory for your self-identity, you got a bad attitude. You argumentative. You're a procrastinator. Those are things that we need to deal with. That's a part of knowing who you are, being true to who you are. And so sometimes, I was talking about being married. God has to get us by ourselves in order for us to hear and know what it is that he's trying to tell us. Because we're moving so fast, and especially when you don't know who you are, you're moving so fast towards nothing. Because if you're not moving in the destiny of who you are, what are you doing? Nothing. And so sometimes God has to get us by ourselves so that we can see and say, hey, wait a minute. This place is not even familiar to me. I'm on a cul-de-sac that I don't know anything about, and there's no through traffic. And God told me to keep it moving, and I'm not moving. And so you have to move some things around and reevaluate how you're doing things. You have to reevaluate the people that you're doing things with. You even have to make sure that you have the right business partners. You can't just go into business with everybody. Just because somebody's willing, you just go ahead and put your money together with somebody else. You got to make sure that's who, God put you with. Just because you might have like ideas, that doesn't mean when you start doing business together that things are going to work out. But I think that it's important. It's important for us to realize this day and age that it's something that we need to start talking to our children about young. We talk about bullies. Bullies have only gotten out of control because as parents, we haven't instilled in our children what we need to instill in them before they leave the house. Of course, I dealt with bullies growing up and it didn't feel good. At the same time, you ain't no better than me. Because my mama and my grandmama told me that I was all that, or whatever they used to say back then. And that was the thought process that was in my mind. What you're not going to do is denounce who I am. And I remember thinking that as a little girl. And that was because there were people who helped me to instill that in my mind. And so we as parents, we have that obligation. We have that obligation to help our children be competent. People that are really close to me, I have watched them raise their kids. And I'm not saying that I'm just such a master mother. I do believe that God did help me because I asked for that help, and he answers all my prayers. So what I do believe, I've watched people have children, and I've watched people skate through the process with their kids, and their kids get 18 and you expect them to know everything they need to know. You expect them to know how to go get a bank account, put your money in the bank, save money. Who taught them that? It's our responsibility to help teach identity to our children, who our children are. It's our responsibility to talk to them before they leave the house, because the world is going to teach them what they want to teach them, not what they should teach them. And so if you as a person are struggling with who you are, how can you help somebody else? You can't. And so stay ahead of the game. Stay ahead of the game. Take self-inventory. I try to do it daily. When I pray, God, show it to me. Show it to me. Anything that is not like you, show it to me. If I need to change something or add something or whatever the case may be, whether it's on your job, whether it's in your marriage, dealing with your kids, dealing with your friends, we're not perfect. And you have to check yourself before somebody else check you. So that's pretty much it for me. That's pretty much all I wanted to say today. I guess the last thing I would say is people mishandle you because they know but don't understand your purpose. People mishandle you because they know but don't understand your purpose. Some people think that it's their business to tell you who you are. Or some people think, well, why is she so this or why is she so that, when they don't know who they are? Because if they did, they would be focusing on all that they could be. God didn't give me more than he gave you. He's no respecter of person. We all have the same opportunities. We all might be dealt different hands, and we might all start in the race at different places. But at the same time, I honestly believe people do and get what they want to get. Period. And so you have to make yourself a priority. I know I said I was getting ready to go, but the last thing I want to say, especially to women, it happens to men too, but especially to women, in relationships, in marriage, you can quickly and easily lose yourself. You do yourself, your husband, your family a disservice when you don't know who you are. You can't make wise decisions when you don't. You owe it to yourself to spend some time with yourself. I know as a wife, I always put my husband first. I don't care what was going on. When he was going to work or getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, fixing breakfast and fixing lunch. And don't get me wrong, it's nothing wrong with that. Um, at the same time, were there some times that I probably should have been getting up praying first? Because I would pray, but most of the time it would be after I got him off to work. When I would pray. And I'm not saying that that's wrong to do. Some people pray in the evening. But for me, I had to hear what God wanted for me. I heard God say, you need to talk to me first. And so we lose ourselves. And a lot of times we marry young when neither the husband nor the wife knows who they are. And as people grow, sometimes they grow apart. If you're working with God in your heart, you usually can get that together. But at the same time, you grow apart. And sometimes when people grow apart or when they grow up a little bit, sometimes you're not who people want you to be. And so it doesn't work out. You bump heads because now you've grown up to who you think or who God says that you're supposed to be. And this person is still used to you being who you were. And now you're not enough. And so, that goes into a whole nother show. And I know I've mostly been, rambling here or whatever, but I just wanted to come on and just talk about how passionate it is for me to tell everybody that I know to know yourself. Who are you? Not who do people say you are. That's for God. Jesus asked that. Who do people say I am? And to that point, I'm not saying that you should not care about who people say you are. But if all you care about is who and what people say you are, then you have an issue. So ask yourself, on the weekend when you have time or whatever, make some time for you to sit down with yourself and love on yourself and figure out who you are. I promise it makes your life so much better. And even in me going back to paying attention to that, my life is so much easier. That stress comes off. And I believe that's a lot, people talking about depression because of COVID and things like that. And I believe that too. But I also believe that when you take self-inventory and you remind yourself of who God says that you are, it gets rid of all that anxiety and depression. So spend some time figuring out who you are. And so that's my time today. I didn't want to keep you a long, long time. I will come on every Thursday at 7 p.m. With some great topics. Everything is not going to be as serious as this. I just see it on a regular basis. I'm a coach as well. That was my latest baby. After I became a hairstylist and I became a real estate broker, then I decided that I wanted to coach because I was doing it on a regular basis. People would just call me up and just start talking. And I said, well, if I'm going to talk to people on the phone, then I'm going to professionally, officially be a coach. And so I love to pour into the lives of people. I'm an encourager by nature, at my heart, at my soul, in my being. I love to encourage people to be their best selves. And so the one thing that I can say that God has always blessed me with is to do what I've always loved to do and be able to make money doing it. And so I enjoy being able to say that I have spoken into a lot of people's lives, and encourage them to move on and be the best them that they can be. And so, with that being said, you can reach out to me at NichelleSmith.com. That is NichelleSmith.com. You can make an appointment. You can sit down. We can talk. I have some strategies that I can give to people. One of the young ladies at church, she's a young lady. She's in her 20s, I believe. And she was sitting down and she was talking the other day. And she said, when you go to a therapist, it's nothing that they really do special. All they do is give you exercises so you can figure out yourself. And she was right. She was right. That was a lot of wisdom. And a lot of us, it goes back to those circles that we need. And sometimes when we don't have the circles that we need, sometimes we have to go talk to people. And sometimes we have to talk to people who are professionals at what they do. And I feel like that I am a great encourager. So if you need a coach, if you need someone to encourage you and push you into your greatest self, into your greatest life, into your greatest business practices, reach out to me at NichelleSmith.com. That's NichelleSmith.com. Just fill out the contact information. And I will get in touch with you as soon as I possibly can. But that is my time. So I will see you guys next week with another really great show of That's So Nikki. I promise we're going to do something fun next weekend. We're going to laugh and we're going to get some information, but we're going to laugh and we're going to have fun. It's not going to be as serious as it was this week. But I just want you to know who you are. All right. You guys have a great one.